Hello there. Today I want to talk about rolling bass lines, ever so present in Psytrance and many other forms of EDM music, most noticeably melodic techno, really popular at the moment. What I wanted to go through in this tutorial is not like the ultimate how to make tutorial, because I don't think there's such a thing. There's so many different bass lines that are made in, at least in Psytrance, they all sound fine and they're not the same. So I wanted to go through basic stuff that is most commonly used, and then you can be happy campers and just go over all of those and try to create something of your own. In the end, get a preset from Splice and just use somebody else's, whatever. But if you really want to geek out with me, let's start from the basics of the basics. A rolling bass line, most usually, not always, is a sawtooth that goes through a filter, a really fast closing filter. We're going to make that just like that, no resonance, thank you. We're going to apply this envelope too, let me shorten that, a really short envelope onto the cutoff frequency. So I'm going to make it short like this, decay, sustain all the way down. Okay, that's what it's going to be. I'm going to lower the octave. So let's try what this sounds like. The first thing you can notice right here is how this sawtooth bass line has always kind of a different transient. Check it out. So listen to the beginning of the note. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't always sound the same. The problem that appears here is not only the transient. There are other things that this is going to interfere with. We'll talk about that later. I have a standard 3-note rolling bass line, some velocity applied right there, and a kick drum to go with it. Let's take care of that initial transient first, and that phase. So the randomness of the phase, we're going to remove that so that the phase of the oscillator always resets from the same position every time we play a new note. And then we can change that starting position and choose a nice starting position where it clicks nicely when it starts. Something like that. Now we can always use this envelope to make a nicer envelope, to make it sound the way we want it to sound. Now I did apply some velocity, which is right now not doing anything. So let's try to apply that velocity to the volume of this oscillator, like that. So now we have some groove with the kick drum. Standard, not bad at all. What we can also do is maybe change this filter so it's slopey. It just depends on what kind of sound you want. What's the most common thing done in Psytrance, from what I can see, from my years and years of experience, is applying some form of multiband processing to that bass. And that multiband is to serve one purpose. Usually where the crossover happens, the phase is going to be messed up. So look at the actual bass line right here. It looks like a sawtooth right now. And when I apply this multiband, it starts bending out of shape a tiny bit. Look at that. It's not a clean sawtooth anymore. And I can even change this into something nicer so you can see that a little bit more zoomed in, like so. Let's move this up. Look at that bass. So as I'm moving that crossover frequency, because there's two filters right there, so it's messing with the actual phase of the bass. It's kind of like an all-pass filter being there. So as we move it left and right, goes over the harmonics and moves the phase of those harmonics, and we do get a different looking and a different sounding bass. And why sounding different? Well, it sounds different because of the actual phase of those harmonics and the phase that they have with each other for that short duration of the note. If I was to do that on an open sawtooth, like so, without the filter, this is going to sound horrible. Get ready. It doesn't make such a difference as when we have a filter that's fast and closing. Now, I hope you're listening to this in a nice environment with studio monitors or at least some nice headphones. And you can notice how the phase change in the lowest fundamental and this, second one or the third one, the way when they change the phase, the way that the groove sounds, depending on the phase, sometimes it's just long, like one note, and sometimes it sounds like three separated notes, like tig-a-dig, tig-a-dig. So that really affects your groove. What I see a lot of people doing is obsessing about the phase of the bass in correlation with the kick drum and how that's going to produce peaks or troughs right here. I really haven't found that of any importance except for the final limiting or clipping stage, whatever you do after the fact, where those are going to produce some peaks you might not want, and that's easily adjustable, like adjust the volume of the end of your kick drum, and that's all, or that initial first note of the bass, like it's easily fixable. You can adjust that by moving the phase. As you see, as I move the phase of the bass line, you can see that it differently interacts with the kick drum, creating peaks and troughs, higher peaks, smaller ones, but not that much important. What really is important is the groove of the kick and the bass together when you're moving the phases of those initial first fundamental, second, third harmonic, when they play like this. As I said, it changes the groove. That's the most important thing about this multiband. Now, you can do it using something multiband like this, which in all honesty, it's like an all-pass filter. You can use an all-pass filter, like if you have an EQ with an all-pass filter, you could use that. Let me try to import one. In this Kirchhoff EQ, I'm going to find a filter that's going to be an all-pass. And you see as I'm moving that all-pass filter left and right, I'm getting the same effect. What happens right there, this all-pass is applying a steep 180 turn at the point of the all-pass, and then from it, I don't want to engage now the plugin doctor to show you, so it's actually bending those phases. That's what's important. You don't really have good control over it. Okay, so my problem with this method is it's all good as long as the note stays the same. Once you change the note, the position of the harmonics in the spectrum moves, and your static all-pass filter or multi-band that you had stays where it was. The solution to that, again, could be to duplicate that synthesizer and have a copy of the synth to play each single note you're using in your bassline, which is usually not too many. So you could actually over-engineer everything and have a couple of different serums with, the same chain where the crossover or that all-pass filter moves for a different note of the synth. I think that's overcomplicating it. You don't have to do that. So within Serum itself, you can go inside the editor and you can change the phase of those harmonics, just like this. And play with it until you get a bass that sounds nice, until the groove of the bass is nice. As I said, don't over focus on how it interacts with the kick drum. That's easily fixable. So you can do that by just moving these phases inside of the synth yourself, and that's it. Voila. You will have a really nice bass line for yourself. You can add additional oscillators, which do other things, whatever you prefer to do. Now, why is this also really convenient? Let me go back to that sawtooth. I'm going to do the same thing approximately. So why is it really nice to move those phases inside of the oscillator and not by using an all-pass filter as well? There is a question of, moving the note, and then when you move the note, your whatever all-pass filter or whatever you had, multi-band with a crossover, doesn't move with it. I play only the bass line right now, and I apply this all-pass filter. So I'm going to shorten all of these notes by a tiny bit. Okay, now all of my bass, the sound actually finishes exactly at the length of the note. It's good, and if I apply this filter, now let's go back to that. So if I apply that all-pass filter to it, we get some overlap. Mind you, that's not that much, but it's just one filter. If you apply more stuff, it's going to cause additional latency depending on if it has any phase mangling happening within the effect that you're using. Usually, it's not that very precise, isn't it? This is going to interfere with the initial, transit of your kick drum. Mind you, this is music. This is not science. It's music. I'm just trying to portray what happens when you use something like this. And depending on how, bad or weird that all-pass filter is, that latency is going to be worse or better. You see, in FabFilter Saturn, it's not that bad. That doesn't really give you good control over what you're doing. So when you do that within the synth itself, when you're just moving these phases, look at that. You're just moving the phases, so you have no artificial latency introduced. Aside of that, you can also control the volume of each separate harmonic. So I could add more volume to the second harmonic or add more volume to the first one, adding more sub. Great control. Much easier to do. The last thing I wanted to notice right here is that within a synth like this, you don't really have to use the envelope because the envelope has time in milliseconds to show you the length. Since I said this could be more precise, I could remove the destinations from this envelope, turn this LFO into an envelope, and then make sure that this lasts only 1/16th note. So the duration of one note is this one envelope right here. That's the exact duration of that one note. And we did shorten these notes a tiny bit more. Let's get that back. So the duration of this LFO as an envelope is exactly that 1/16th length note, like this. So now the shape of the envelope, pulling that filter downwards, is even more controllable, at least in my opinion, because you could have it do something, whatever, crazy. But the point is, you have more points than just one. You can add like double stage release like this. Whatever you feel like doing. So this gives you even greater control over that filter envelope that's happening. That covers everything that we do within the synth. The last thing I wanted to mention is about listening to that groove, which I think is the most important thing, is if you wanted to listen to the groove, you have to remove those high frequencies because we are actually interested in that low part of the kick and the bass. So we want to listen only to that part without listening to the high frequencies because it's easier for your brain to actually discern what it sounds like. So I'm going to place a filter, a low pass filter on the master, like so. Okay, nice. I want to hear the kick and the bass. Okay, first of all, when I do this, I already hear that my bass is really, really quiet compared to the kick drum. That's better. Aside of having that envelope that we can move, decide what's happening, what I wanted to show you was this. Now when I move these phases to get a different groove, it's going to be much easier to hear the groove of the kick and the bass together. You see, when I do this, it's very flat. And like this, sounds like it has three separate notes. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying that it's much easier to create and control what do you want your bass to sound like. It's easier to hear it, it's easy to control it. Now, the last thing I want to do right here is the filter I applied also applies a phase shift. That is not going to help us because when we remove this filter, the phase has changed again. So whatever we did, whatever we were listening to was not right. Apply a linear phase filter, the lowest possible so you induce the least amount of ringing, and then listen to it. And decide what kind of groove you want, what sounds best to you as a groove. Go back to not having the filter and see if you like it. And that's all I can say. I'm not saying that this is a great bass sound or the other one is a great bass sound, but I think you have the tools and the knowledge now to experiment and get a good bass sound of your own. Last thing I want to mention is usually in a lot of synths, it's possible to just use a monophonic mode and make sure that it's only one note playing at a time. But there is a problem in Serum where if you do that, the initial transient of every other note is not going to sound fine. They are trying to overlap because of the release on the amp envelope. So I suggest, because we're not playing notes together, don't do that. Don't make it monophonic. Just leave it polyphonic. You're not going to play notes together. Avoid doing that. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down, comment on my stupid glasses. If you're not subscribed, please do. Most of you watching these videos are not subscribed. It will really help the channel. And if you want a preset like this, just to start from it, I don't think this is like by any means the perfect sound, but if you want this preset I have right here in Serum to just have it as a starting point, you don't want to go ahead from the beginning of the video and copy it, I'll leave a link down below for downloading it. If you want to learn more about music production, head on over to mixingacademy.com. I have a course that's 40 plus hours long, and thanks to 11.org, it's completely free. See you in the next video. Bye.